people fool us, the people lie to us, the government betray us. They can lie, they can steal, they will not come up. I said we tired with their lies, we tired with their promises that left us to a lot of damages. We tired with that speech they preach indeed, and now unique they deceive us. The thing we saw, it frustrates us. So why can't you lie? Why can't you steal? Why can't you allow the citizens to be? You see, we just tell you that why we voted you. But you fool us, you screw us, you use us a little and abuse us. So why? The government should lie. Why? But that's the question that we ask. The government betray us. They betray us so much. I said they lie.
Good morning to you, Josh. It's afternoon.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm a little under the weather, but I'm here.
You got COVID?
Yes.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
What are you taking?
I just found out like a few minutes ago. So.
All right. So what you want to do? You're vaccinated, right?
Yep.
Okay. So you want to contact your primary care physician and have him.
Have her. Is Euphemia Bromsky?
Have her prescribe the antivirus called Paxlovid, Paxlovid.
Okay, Paxlovid.
Okay, yeah, I think you have to take it within 5 days of being diagnosed. And then it's a 10-day treatment.
Okay.
But it's something you have to get on right away.
Right. No, we already called her. I'm supposed to be getting a call at some point soon.
Okay, but it's not something you even have to go in for. All you got to do is just have her write the prescription. I know here in Arizona, there are only, at least in the Phoenix area, there are only 3 pharmacies that carry that antiviral.
Oh, wow.
So you have to make sure that, she's aware of it also.
So it's been recognized as an effective.
Yes, it is an approved treatment. There are 2 of them.
Okay.
There's Paxlovid and there's Monopluraver.
I heard that one.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. What about you? How you doing?
I'm doing great. I ain't getting COVID no time soon, ever.
Why?
Huh?
How you figure? You bring people sometimes to do repair work and stuff?
Dude, you come in my house, you wear a mask. If you don't have a mask, I got one to give you.
Okay. Got that.
Okay. I don't take any chances. I mask and I distance. I got boxes of masks here. So anybody who comes, if you're entering my home, if you don't have a mask, I give you one. If you refuse to wear one, you ain't coming in my house.
So what created a separation between how deadly COVID was before and where it's like a common cold now to most people?
A few people are vaccinated.
Okay.
That's the number one thing. That's the number one thing, that a significant percentage of the population is vaccinated.
Okay. So you don't think there's any change in the virus or anything like that?
Oh, no, the virus has changed. But again, people's immunity has increased because they're vaccinated. So, getting the vaccine doesn't mean you're not going to get COVID. Right?
I'm a perfect
What
example,
it means is that you will get COVID, but when you get COVID, your body is more capable of fighting COVID off. And so you don't end up in the hospital.
Right.
But you still take the antivirals just in case you get a strain of COVID that may evade your may evade your immune system.
Got you.
I mean, this is stuff that we're dealing with in our clinic every day, literally every day.
Right.
And we still have people who are not vaccinated. And for those people, we send them to get the monoclonal antibody infusion.
Okay. Wonderful. So what we got here today? Some fundamentals with regards to what Mr. Cummings talked about. I don't know. Have you been able to look at his speech?
Yeah, I did listen to the speech.
Okay. So I think we can touch on that. We can touch on the whole issue of entertainment versus governing. Because we see how dire the circumstances are, but it seems like our president is kind of oblivious to what's going on, around him. There was and that ties into what Dr. Lester Tenney, a strong seditious, spoke about, and then probably briefly touch on the rule fund and where the legislature is with what they are saying now, and then close with, I think there's one or two articles kind of re-featuring our former schoolmate Bernard Yue, and then close out. So we want to try to stick to a 1 hour contract. We about 10 minutes in or 7 minutes in already. So overall, what's your perspective on what Mr. Cummings was talking about?
Well, I mean, the speech was good. I think what we have to actually, what I took from it at least, is the lack of imagination within the government of Liberia. I've always said, in order for government to work, government has to work. And what we see here is a convergence of things and opportunities that the government could leverage to kill multiple birds with one stone. So where are we now?
Right.
We have a need to do a census, right?
Right.
We have a need to do biometric identification. We have a need to do election registration and identification. Couple that with the function that Social Security has to do, i.e. identify people. Couple that with the role, or add that to the role and function of the Bureau of Vital Statistics. Okay, those are all the things that kind of should be working together.
But George, these are fundamental things. Why can't people grasp the necessity of putting these things in place?
Because I don't believe those people have an understanding of how these things actually work together. They see them as separate entities. So what does Vital Statistics do? Vital Statistics registers births and deaths.
Right.
That's what they do. So if you can get a reasonable accounting of the number of people who are born, and there are, for example, SMS-based systems that will allow us to report births.
So
with location.
Some of the people I know, they see SMS all the time, but I bet you a lot of people don't know what that.
Okay, SMS is text messaging, short message service. That's what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
But it allows us to report births with location information.
Right.
So that is something that would feed directly into the type of data you need for census.
And what I mean, you need a structure around that. You need a database. You need
a database system, but you need some for the census. What you need is you need to count people, and you need to count people in a location.
Right.
That's what the census is. We want to know how many people. We want to know how many people are in the country overall, but we also want to know where those people are in the country so that we can do the legislative allotments.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. And
So
that's a kind of proof or identification of birth, right? Because
correct.
so many people come and say they're Liberians because
Right.
our country doesn't
So
have no
you
system.
have vital statistics that has not developed any mechanism to report births or deaths immediately.
Right.
You have a need to identify, or you have an agency that you've set up to do national identification. You have another agency that has to do voter registration that has to register almost 3 million people in the next 12 months.
But
So
you say register
voter registration.
People. Yeah, but we've talked this before, right? There are people already registered, at least 2.4, 2.5 million people already in the system, even though there are a lot of flaws with that system.
Where? I mean, you are pretending as if you know that system actually still even exists.
Well, they're about to have an election for Lufa.
Yes, but they also are asking for $70 million, right? To do voter registration.
Right. And in that is the whole biometric thing, which we have a separate view of where they should be doing, upholding the biometric records as the records of truth.
Correct. So this lack of convergence in multiple government agencies and function, it means we end up with data that is duplicated, data that is incorrect, and we can't even make reasonable estimates. Because, I mean, I'm sure there are probably some places in Liberia where nobody has a cell phone. That would be hard to believe, but it's possible.
Or nobody has a smartphone. There's some areas where
no. If you're sending SMS, you don't have to have a smartphone. Right? You don't have to have a smartphone. There's an SMS system. There's an SMS system you can design that says send a text message to 12345. And that text message automatically goes to the Bureau of Vital Statistics.
Right.
So send it or text message the number 1 for a birth or the number 2.
But I know there are a lot of areas without network. But geez, I would be surprised.
But what I'm saying is, what I'm saying is, so you can build this thing where you send the text message to a specific number. You says, and if you text the number 1, you say, I want to report a birth. Right. It will say, enter 1 for male, enter 2 for female. You enter that. Enter the date of birth. You enter that. And then enter the, what do you call the thing? The legislative district that the person was born in. Okay? If you can capture those 5 elements, you can go back around later and say there was a baby born on this date at this location, in this district. How big are the actual districts? Right?
Oh, you're absolutely correct.
You can do the same thing to report deaths. So you can have a rough estimate of the number of births in a district versus the number of deaths in a district. But that structure has not been put in place. You can have county health office or county vital statistics officers who collaborate with the people at the Ministry of Health to do all of that kind of reporting. So, one of the things Mr. Cummings talked about in his speech was that these systems require people.
Right. They do.
Before that, they require imagination.
And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to reimagine how things should
They
be.
require imagination. And what we have is a group of people who are running the government who lack imagination. And they don't have an understanding of how these things are supposed to work together. You know, government is not a silo of agencies.
No, it's a very integrated, collaborative
It's
body.
an integrated collaboration of agencies all working towards a common goal. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine today, and I said, you know, when you talk to like, or the view of people in Liberia about government is like the 7 blind men from Calcutta who saw the elephant. I don't know if you're familiar with that poem.
Yes, I am. That's
Right.
a revealing and a point that talks about, you know, the different ways that people can be looking at the same thing.
So these 7 guys are blind, and they're all going to see an elephant. Just let me tell the story for the audience.
Okay.
And so one guy grabs the tail of the elephant, and he says, "Oh, the elephant is just like a snake." The other guy goes up against the side of the elephant, and he said, "But the elephant's like a wall." One guy puts his arms around one of the legs of the elephant, and he says, "Oh, the elephant's like a tree." Somebody else takes the elephant's tusk and says, "Oh, the elephant's like a spear." At the end of the day, all of them have a view of the elephant that is not incorrect to them. But singularly, it's incorrect.
Very, very incorrect.
Okay? And basically, that's how I see government functioning in Liberia.
So will you say in previous times, it was probably a little better than what it is today?
Well, you know, it's easy to manage 1.5 million people when only 225,000 of them live in Monrovia. It's fairly easy to manage them.
Especially when you don't give a damn for them.
Well, no. It's a whole different issue when you have 1.6 million people now living in Monrovia and you don't have any infrastructure or resource to match the increase in the population.
Fact.
Okay?
Yes.
So, but what it does is it creates this really vicious cycle, because the people who are leaving their villages to come to Monrovia, they're coming to Monrovia because of the things they have in Monrovia. They may not always have electricity, but at least they will have some electricity. They may not have schools for their children to go to, but at least they will have some schools for their children to try to go to. So at some point as a parent, your survival instinct kicks in and says, you know what? My kids aren't getting anything in my village. We don't have electricity. We don't have water. We don't have access to food. So let's go to Monrovia. So what does that do? It increases the need for the government to continue to provide or expand the resources in Monrovia, which is exactly counterproductive as to what you should be doing to keep people out of Monrovia.
Right.
Because what you should be doing to keep people out of Monrovia is to carry development to where they are.
Right. Provide incentives in a decentralized manner. And that has
correct.
not
So
really
let them have access to some electricity. Let them have access to wells. Let them have access to farm tools. And if you do those things, you will then encourage people in Monrovia to move out of Monrovia, reducing the amount of resources that you need to put in Monrovia. Listen, I don't care if all the turbines at Mount Coffee are working every day.
It still won't hit the core.
It's not enough to produce the amount of electricity that you need for 1.5 million people.
And that's why we always call into question that whole plan, that whole compact, and the way it was structured.
Okay, so at the end of the day, the problem with, listen, I have the paper that was written by these guys at Columbia.
Yeah.
Regarding the electrification of Liberia.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge that I saw in the paper was it wasn't so much the cost to rebuild Mount Coffee, but it was going to cost about $3 billion to build the transportation infrastructure for that electricity.
Yep.
Okay, so why do you want to do that?
And there
this means you have to import light poles, you have to import wiring, you have to build substations everywhere. And when I say, at the beginning, these are people who lack imagination.
Yeah.
And on several of these shows, we've demonstrated that. We've demonstrated, for example, with the lack of power to the airport, where the government wants $23 million, but you take one of the largest airports in India that spent $10 million on a solar power plant, right?
Mm-hmm.
To run their airport.
Yeah.
Including battery packs.
We don't even need that amount of energy. We can get half of that.
You look at the stadium that was built in Senegal. Fabulous stadium that ranks that ranks with any European stadium. A part of the plan for the stadium brought in a 3-megawatt power plant, solar power plant. So the stadium is self-sufficient and doesn't tax the grid in any way. If you can't keep if you can't keep the electricity on at RIA, what is to make me believe that a 6-hour game at night, or a 6-hour time frame where you have an international soccer event,
right?
Are you going to have electricity? No, you're not. So all of these things and the lack of imagination, continues to confound and restrict the growth and development of the country.
But so what can we do? Because many of us don't want Liberia to fail. We don't want the government to fail as much as we would like for our political party and other people to be in power or to be leading the charge. If this government was effective, there will be no need for that. If they were embracing, enabling, there will be no need.
Listen, my criticism of the government is the same criticism I had about Ellen. And like I told the people who were hardcore Ellenites, I said, if Ellen had done some of the things that Kagame has done in Rwanda, even when she died, I would want to embalm her and for her body to still be president. But this is not what we have. Listen, what we have in Liberia is a fundamental lack of knowledge and understanding of how things actually work.
Yep.
Okay? There's a game, and I don't know how many people in Liberia have access to the game. There's a game called Sim City that you can play.
Mm-hmm. S-I-M?
And Sim City, S-I-M City.
Oh,
and it's about simulating the building of a city.
Wow.
And this game's got to be at least 25, 30 years old. But I always said, if I could get kids in Liberia to understand and play Sim City, they would get an understanding of the things that drive development. So in this game, you start off with a blank piece of land,
mm-hmm.
and you start off with some money, and you start off with the ability to do certain things. So you build a power plant, then you build a school, you build a library, you have a police station. And what you notice is the citizens in the thing are called Sims. The more of these things you build, the more Sims come to your city that you're building.
Oh wow! So you playing a game against somebody else who's doing the same thing?
No, you're playing against yourself.
Okay.
So let's say you build a coal power plant, right? And
mm-hmm.
then maybe you get to 50,000 people, but now you got to build a bigger coal power plant or switch to an electric power plant. Okay? Because the Sims don't like pollution.
So a lot of people don't understand the power of simulation, though.
Well, that's my point. Okay, but it's a very instructive game because it shows you that if you don't build the services for the population, as the population grows, they start to move. And as the population starts to move, your tax base decreases.
And there's most times there's nothing to generate income for you to even tax.
Exactly. So if you want Sims to move to your city, you got to build an elementary school, you got to build a high school, you got to build a library, you have to build, shopping districts, and you got to provide adequate power. And the power that you provide has to be big enough to support the population. Because if it's not, then you will start getting brownouts in different parts of your city, and the Sims will leave.
That's a nice game.
It's a very, very beautiful game. It's a simulation, but it teaches young kids what to expect from government and how government is supposed to function. If you don't do these things, your city will not grow. If you do these things, your city will grow. You would build a tax base, and all that kind of stuff. But, again, let's come back to
the speech.
Our government and the lack of imagination. So back to Mr. Cummings' speech about the need to do the census.
Right.
The government could easily establish an interagency commission and say all of these agencies have some function to play, and we're going to get financing. Because here's the thing, as far as I know, the plan for the voter registration is to the plan for voter registration is for the NEC to do the voter registration, provide voter IDs to everybody who is eligible to vote,
right,
and then take the data and dump it over at the National Identification Registry,
which makes no sense, but
who would then issue another ID card. So that means that we are now going to spend twice the amount to do the same thing that we could spend doing it once.
And probably because it's already inflated, it's probably 3 to 4 times the actual cost.
And because the National Identification Registry does not have a budget, a self-sustaining budget, they're powerless to do anything. So the NEC basically has said to the international community, elections are so important, so we need to have that money. And when we're done with it, we're going to dump the data over to the National Identification Registry, and whatever they do with it is up to them. So after the election, we will end up with a biometric election database, but no biometric identification for the country.
And that's a waste of money, because you can do
again,
both.
Lacking imagination, lacking an understanding of how things work. You see, this is where I go after people like Samuel Twe, because I see these people go to these Hatai shops and just spew nonsense. Nothing that Samuel Twe says is defensible within the structure of the government. So, for example, let's step back and look at NASCORP. NASCORP already has as its primary function the need to identify everyone who is participating in Social Security and their beneficiaries. So, on a more practical level, the assumption is that every person in the country will participate in Social Security. Is that correct?
Well, some people will argue that
a
significant number of those people will not get a job. They will not get anybody paying anything in there for their Social Security.
That is only if you assume that you're not going to ever grow your economy. Okay? That's the premise. If that's the premise that you're operating on, then you're 100% correct. But the idea here is that at some point, every person will be employed at some point. And from the instant you're employed, you will be in that system. Is that correct?
That should be correct, yeah.
Correct. So then they are the group of people that need to identify every person. So what the government should actually do, and we've said this before, what the government should actually do is to second the National Identification Registry to NASCORP. Let them become the identification branch of NASCORP. Now, you now have an agency whose responsibility is to register all these people. National Identification Registry is now a part of the registration identification portion of NASCORP. The next thing they should do is all identity functions within the government and all money for identity functions within the government would then be sent to that organization.
But that exactly some of the waste and stuff that Mr. Cummings also talked about, because this duplication, instead of trying to really streamline services that are cross-cutting, across the entire government, and letting one body handle them and be a service provider to the rest of the people, they don't do it.
Because I'm willing to bet you that Samuel Twe cannot tell you what he sees as the function of national identification. So since I know that he's too stupid to even understand that, I will let him know what it is now. One of the problems that you have in developing countries is the lack of inclusion of people in the formal economy.
Oh, yeah. We've been talking about that.
That's the number one thing a national identification ID does. First, it identifies everybody in the country, and it also identifies their interaction with the financial system, their interaction with, say, Social Security and all of those entities.
And all of that ties in with billing.
Okay, so it expands the formal economy. Now, there are services that the National Identification Organization has to provide to the rest of government and to even private entities. And those services particularly center around identity verification. So let's think about all the places we use biometric IDs. Right now you have, I think Civil Service had a program. I don't know where that program ended up. Passports had a program. I don't know where it ended up. You would have driver's licenses. I don't know where that is. Okay. You would have Social Security cards, and you would have
you say you don't know what driver license is?
I don't know where they are in Liberia with it.
Oh, shoot. Our transport ministry is not much.
Right. And then you would have election identification. You see, I think the thing to stress here, especially when it comes to the National Election Commission, is that they should never own the identification data. They should only be a consumer of the identification data. So from a database perspective, what you would be doing is you would give the NEC what's called a data view, where they can see that data, and on their end, the only thing they have to add is the voting precinct and district of a particular person.
Right, because our national identification number can be used as the voter registration number too.
Exactly. That's our voter registration number here. So you know, this lack of imagination, it leads to duplication, it leads to corruption, and it leads to theft. On a broader scale, my disappointment is also with the international community.
I was about to bring that up, but give you a thought and I will share my own.
Because these people know better. They do. Without exception, they know better. But there is this overwhelming sense that these Africans don't know any better. So I'm just going to come in here. I will do what needs to be. I would do what the mission statement calls for. And I will have something to put on my resume, and I'm out of here. And 4 years later, you're back at the same place you were.
They're always looking for the next job. They're looking for a promotion.
Exactly.
Move forward. You know?
Exactly. So 4 years later, you're right back at the next job. I mean, think about all of the money that these people have spent. We still have not seen the cumulative effect of what they've done. It always seems like we're starting over.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about legislating development as well, because everybody comes in with a new plan, whether that vision 2030, vision 2050, agenda for transformation, everything like that. There's nothing standard. Nothing is carried forward from one different administration.
So I agree with Isaac Weatherspoon that the international community treats Liberia with the squeaky wheel principle. Whatever our emergency is, that's what they are going to address right now.
All stopgaps, nothing
Correct.
Holistic.
And because we lack the vision, we don't ask for anything more. We're always trying to just fix this problem that we have right now. So, you know, that's where we are.
Right. And you know, the international community does a poor job of really monitoring, evaluating where the dollars are going and how they have been spent. And I don't know whether it's calculated to keep this debt cycle
let me tell you something, okay? I've said this many times, Isaac. Liberia is like your relative on crack. It is. Thanksgiving, he shows up at your house. He's dressed, there's food, and he looks clean, and you're like, man, have you seen Uncle John? He looks really good. Uncle John will come to you and say, look, I don't like all this white people food, this turkey and all this stuff. Give me $10 so I can go to McDonald's. I said, Uncle John, all this food here, you know, nah, I don't like this stuff, man. And you're so impressed that Uncle John looks good, and you're going to give him $10. You ain't seeing Uncle John again.
Nope.
Because the next time you see him, he's missing one sock, his clothes are dirty, and he's been on that pipe again. And it's this continuous cycle over and over. Listen, Liberia is not the only country in the world with problems. There's a war going on in Ukraine where they're killing white people. We are not the priority. And the fact that we are making so little cumulative progress, they would rather spend their resources somewhere else. I posted an article this morning on my page about the FAA has given a Zipline the authority to operate as an airline. And what is Zipline? Zipline is a drone delivery company that delivers small packages in local areas. Well, guess what one of the things on the article said? That Zipline has delivered over 1 million COVID vaccines in Ghana.
Right, last mile delivery.
Right.
I read that Ghanaian article.
Okay. It says Zipline says it has delivered over 1 million COVID vaccines in Ghana, as well as medical supplies, transport activity in Rwanda, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Kenya. What do these countries have that we don't have?
Leadership.
They have leadership and they have infrastructure.
And building that infrastructure, it started with leadership again, but it's not because it's not like it was just always there. You know, some people make the excuse that because of the colonialization of different African countries, so they were way ahead of us. I don't know if that's necessarily true because a lot of
so let me just dismiss that argument as nonsense. Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Rwanda emerged from the civil war at the same time.
Right, with infrastructure destroyed.
In the Rwanda civil war, over 1 million people were killed in a matter of weeks. Sierra Leone is right next door.
And we know how they were chopping people up more than us. They chopped
Today, Liberians are driving to Freetown for vacation.
And happen to be taking pictures and showing it too.
Think about that. So you can't use colonization as an excuse if you're going to evaluate what Rwanda has done in the same 20-year period that we have had.
Fact. But again, like what Dwalu is saying here, what happens when government officials see inclusion as a threat to their perceived unearned glorified positions? Because many don't want to take input, suggestions, or collaborate with people who are not kissing the butts. And that's one of the biggest problems we have. Many people have faced that problem.
So, I mean, here we are, and I think at the most critical time in the country's history. We have a government of people who are happy to tell you, I'm minister of this, I'm minister of that, but they can't explain to you what their short-term vision is or what their long-term vision is. Listen, we're falling far behind. You know, you and I had a conversation a few weeks ago where you were talking about bringing manufacturing to Liberia.
Right.
And I told you it's never going to happen. It's happening in Ghana. It's happening in Rwanda. And it's not happening there 5 years from now. It's happening right now.
Right now. Yep.
Okay. And with every manufacturing plant that you build, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Toyota says, oh, you know, the people in Ghana can assemble cars. Well, Isuzu said, well, guess what? We can go to Ghana too. We can go to Rwanda. Nobody is going to make an investment in Liberia to assemble cars when you don't have an abundance of electricity, you don't have an abundance of water, and you don't have an abundance of semi-skilled workers or an educated population.
When your average school years is 2.4 years, you know how bad you're struggling.
Okay. And so that means that with each year, we are going to be falling further and further behind. It means
so it comes down to Liberian people trying to make the right decision for leadership. That's
right.
That's where it starts. That's where it starts. And that's why the elections are critical. That's
so,
why,
you know, there's a person on here who's somebody named Sheikh Faya that says Mr. Cummings will be president in Atlanta, Georgia. Let me explain something to you, Sheikh. You know, with me, I've decided, and what did I post on my page yesterday? I will tell you what I posted on my page. Do not stay in arguments with stupid people because you are not the jackass whisperer.
But you read that story with the lion, okay, the tiger, and the donkey.
Yeah. So let me just complete to Mr. Fire here. Mr. Fire, I live in America. I never have to come to Liberia. Ever. What is in Liberia is for you and your children. If you like the way it is and you believe honestly that that is the best it can be for you, by all means, vote for the people you voted for the last time.
That's what I say.
If you are confident that this is where you need to go, I got no argument with you. Because you know what will happen? It doesn't matter how you vote. I'm still going in my swimming pool. Every day. Doesn't matter. So if you think by saying, oh, Cummings will be president in Atlanta, that you're offending me,
no,
that you're insulting me, that you're being smart, guess what? I don't really care. The only thing I can tell you is these are the things that you need to do in Liberia. These are some of the experiences that I have. And if you want a president who dances in front of trash, that's good for you. You deserve that president.
Yeah. You know, and that's why a lot of our young people who, you know, have this fanaticism or devout love or whatever for Weah. He's great as an athlete. He was great. He's a wonderful entertainer, but he has failed as president. He could have been successful if he had gone the right path, but he has failed. And
well, you know, part of leadership is understanding what you don't know.
And that's why I appreciate Mr. Cummings.
That's part of leadership. So when we look at even the appointments that Mr. Weah has made, can we honestly say that, you know, okay, Mr. Weah says, I don't have any experience in maritime, but I'm going to find people who really have experience and who can help. He goes and finds somebody who claims that they did an internship from a school that literally the only requirement for acceptance to that school on their website is you only have to be breathing. You can be a dropout from high school. You can be a convict. You can be a criminal. But to gain entrance to that school, the requirement is you just got to be alive. And she did supposedly a 1-year course there, did an internship, and Mr. Weah actually believes that that qualifies her to be the deputy at Maritime. What it says, it doesn't speak that badly about her. It speaks badly about Weah in terms of his lack of confidence, in terms of his inability to understand the role of a president.
No, he got no idea.
The role of the president is not to be the smartest person in the room. But according to the people Mr. Weah is choosing, that's how he sees it. So he will select somebody who is completely unqualified to run an airport that has all kinds of problems. He will select somebody who is completely unqualified to be the second in command at Maritime, because he doesn't want anybody who knows more about those highly technical areas than he actually does. And that is also a reflection of a Mr. McGill. That is also a reflection of a Samuel Tway. That is also a reflection of the entirety of the government. That they have a crisis of self-confidence, and they continue to exacerbate that crisis by reinforcing the hiring of other people.
Yeah, so Daniel is saying, you know, our people aren't sophisticated, they are illiterate, and they are both uninformed and misinformed. Yes, part of that is true, Daniel. But at the end of the day, the people can see their life, or do people just don't know what a better life is, or what a better opportunity is, or what government should be doing at all? I mean, are people that oblivious to what's supposed to happen? Many of these people have somebody who's exposed, have somebody out there, has somebody who has left the village and being able to say,
you and I have known Daniel for a while. I don't believe Daniel is illiterate. I don't believe he's unsophisticated. I don't believe he is uninformed. I don't believe he is misinformed. So let me ask Daniel now. If the election were held today, would you still support Mr. Weah? It's just that simple. Because if we can understand how his thinking has changed from the hope that he had in what year was the election? Then, and where he understands now it would give us a better appreciation for the lack of sophistication of the people in Liberia.
Yeah, so asking for a 5-year plan. Most people even got 1-year plan before they have a 5-year plan. It will be interesting.
Shouldn't you have made that 5-year plan 5 years ago?
Thank you.
I'm just asking.
It's kind of sitting there.
You're in the 5th year. You are currently in the 5th year, and you're saying, where's your 5-year plan?
No, somebody asking for a 5-year plan. He can't show it to us. He can't even show how he tracked the last 4.5 years before he will show us a 5-year plan going forward.
Yeah, but here's the thing. He doesn't have to show me anything, because the things that are happening with critical infrastructure in Liberia are visible for the world to see.
The evidence. But that's my point.
Okay.
So if
these things are in evidence, Fire, when every flight to Liberia is a life-changing event, possibly, because they might run out of fuel. I don't need anybody to tell me that there's just no way in hell I'm getting on a plane to come to Liberia. I mean, the ticket says it will end up at RIA, but that's been highly unlikely lately. So, we can see these things, Fire. It doesn't matter what you say. We can see them. We can see that people are hungry. We can see that Liberia is a nation of beggars. Every time you talk to somebody in Liberia, they're hitting you up for money. I mean, were it not for the people in America who send hundreds of millions of dollars to Liberia every year, and that amount of money serves as the social safety net.
Yes, that's it.
Okay? You people have no understanding where Liberia would be.
Great. So quickly, before we try to get out of here, there's this whole issue of the road fund, and I think we should take some time to really look at it next week, and where the lawmakers are saying they kind of factor it into the recast budget, but I don't really see how they did, and there's no strong breakdown that shows a crosswalk between what the 2019-2020 budget was versus what the recast budget was. So that's another issue with transparency in financial reporting from government that we have to look at. Then I will send you some information too on special drawing rights, where we had all these monies that were supposed to come towards providing reserve for the central bank, providing COVID relief, and kind of restarting the economy, or helping to improve the churn or the turnaround in the economy. And right now, there are a couple of civil society groups that are wondering, especially for the healthcare dollars, what happened with them? Where are they with them? So that will be a very, very important topic for us to touch on.
We understand that whenever you have large sums of money that are in dispute in the government, the legislators are complicit in the pillaging of that money. We saw it when they were trying to sell those fake oil leases from NoCal. And they decided that they were going to give each legislator so much money to go back to their districts. I think what we haven't seen is, has this happened out of that $25 million road fund?
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So let me just ask you, what's the total number of legislators we have?
103, 73 representatives, and 30 senators.
Okay. So if we give each one of those people, if finance found a way to send each one of them $25,000, do you really think they care about the road fund? They don't.
Fact.
That's 10% of the $25 million.
Fact.
We saw this happen with NorCal.
And that's what happens. That's what happens. And they call it lobbying. It's criminal, but they call it lobbying.
Yes. We saw this happen with NorCal. So it comes back to the fact that we don't have a strong formal economy. We don't have any way to what do you call the thing? To track the disbursement of funds.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't know who got the money.
And even if we assume they used 7 million, but there were nearly 24.8 million that's outstanding. So let's justifiably use 7 million.
And the fact that the legislature does not want to investigate this tells you that they are complicit. That's all it comes down to.
Very complicit.
I mean, listen, this is not a hard country to figure out.
But again, George, people try to focus it only on the legislature. But if you had an effective government,
but the legislature is supposed to provide oversight.
Yeah, but when
the people who are supposed to provide oversight are actually complicit in the theft, you don't have it. So listen, even if the government is not functioning correctly, if you have proper oversight, the purpose of oversight is to protect the affairs of the people. So even in the instance of a failed government, if you have effective oversight, you will limit the damage done to the people. But if the legislators themselves are complicit, then you just open the floodgates.
Big time.
So that's the tragedy of Liberia. It's always been the tragedy of Liberia, that the legislature has always been complicit in with the function of the executive. And the challenge is, how do we fix that? So
and
that's enough food for thought.
That's food for thought for next week. And we're talking about the SDRs. I was saying more information on the SDRs so we can touch on them and seek transparency and accountability there, because that's all part of this whole development process that a lot of people don't see what's happening.
Well, I would just tell you, our problems are so many that I think that the next president needs to have a constitutional convention that will help us restructure the government. I simply don't see any reason for a senator who is elected twice to serve nearly 20 years on 2 elections.
Yeah, we talked about that time frame. There's even
that's an entire generation.
If you want to say 20 years is, but 10 years for some people, 10 years
20 years is a generation.
Yeah, but some people say 10 years is also a generation.
Well, no, 10 can't be a generation, because the idea is that you must have reproduced in that time. And it's reasonable to assume that reproduction will start at year 18.
Right. Yeah, but a lot of the age bands are in 10 years. But let's take 20. That's a whole 20. Generation. You're right.
So if a senator is elected twice, he's elected for 18 years.
And many of them are.
If a member of the House of Representatives is elected 3 times, he's elected for 18 years.
Yes.
Okay? we got to change that structure. Because once you are elected, you have no reason to serve the people's interest.
But
we don't have the ability to recall these people.
Did I ever send you some of the recommendations from this civil society group that was looking at?
No, you didn't.
Oh, I will send it to you. They even suggesting time periods. I think 5 and 7 and 6 that would just
okay. So mathematically, it should be 3 and 6.
Right, for it to be recurrent and
and so you're not having an election every year.
Yeah.
It should be 3 and 6. The senators serve for 6 years. The representatives serve for 3 years. Every 6 years, 50% of the Senate will be elected. So you will have an election every 3 years.
Okay, so quickly before we go, what is the big deal if there's a full turnover of the Senate?
You don't have, you lose institutional knowledge.
Do they have it?
Well, the point is, the design is to allow that to happen.
So what about for the representatives? You don't, if there was a complete turnover, you don't lose the institutional knowledge?
But the likelihood that you will have a complete turnover is very slim, because there's so many of them.
Same for the 30, though. Same for the 30.
No, because there's a smaller number of people. But again, I'm just talking about looking at what happens here in the U.S. is you don't want to lose that institutional knowledge by bringing in everybody who doesn't understand how the procedures work. And the idea that we don't have that right now doesn't mean that the system is flawed. That the design of the system is bad. It just means we have bad people in the system. So, I think the most fundamental things we have to do is we have to restructure the terms of the legislature. We have to do that. The next thing we have to do is we have to restructure the political districts of the country. Okay?
And that's why elections are so critical. And even the
15 counties are just too many, and they don't allow the type of integration that you need for a functional economy. So I think we need to go back to where we divide the country into 3 provinces. Each province has 10 senators. You still keep the same number of senators. You still keep the same number of legislative districts. But now you have these provinces functioning as a cohesive unit.
Yeah.
Because there is simply no way that River G or Grand Cru has enough of a population and enough of an economy to be self-sustaining. So you can talk about the political districts all you want, but as soon as you start talking about autonomous government, it breaks down because these smaller counties don't have any resources. And they can't be self-sustaining. You can't have autonomy if I'm signing your check. None of the people who work for me have autonomy.
So this is a rule for issue. We're talking about that. We're talking about that LIB with 2 country devil. We'll talk about that maybe next week. But George, thank you. If you want some closing stuff, go ahead.
We're good. Let's do this again next week. I think people, I'm getting a lot of calls days after the show, and people want to talk about more things. We need to figure out how we can get on the radio during drive time in Liberia.
Right. I'm working on that.
For maybe 2 or 3 days a week.
Oh, you ready to do that? That's wonderful if you are.
Well, for me, okay, so let me just put it to you this way. All of my meetings with regards to my business are scheduled on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay, so Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are good days.
Monday and Wednesday, I don't commit anything to Friday.
Okay,
right.
So we can start off, even if we start off with 1, it's impactful because I do share this with like 3,000 people after the show, and sometimes I add more and go on social media and share it. So there's a lot of people watching this. I get a lot of feedback too. They give you a lot of praise, which is wonderful. But I think some people are getting it. So we just need to really take it down to the next level, the radio, and then hopefully get community stations and be able to, you able to stay to a raw Liberian way?
Yes, I can, but I shouldn't have to.
No, you should have to, George. Our we got 80 to 85% of our people who will look like they're in space if you just speak normal. Just normal. I don't say using polysyllabic words. I'm just saying normal. You know, not
All
trying
right,
to
but for the most part, I try to talk slowly. Okay, I try not to use big words, and I think for the most part, people get it.
People are getting it. People are getting it.
People are getting it. But I would like to have, let's say if we didn't do this and we did a Monday, Wednesday drive time, that would work great.
Okay.
Say 90 minutes at a time, that would be great.
All right. We trying to get at least start off with 1 or 2 radio stations and then with simulcast.
Okay, so let me ask, let me address this person called Sage Thompson.
Right.
Okay. Reimagine, who's doing that? Those outside Liberia are the 5 million citizens back home. Sage, the 5 million citizens that you have back home, is the direction of the country where you think it should be? I mean, that's the only question you have to answer.
And it will never be everybody. Vision and leadership comes in limited quantities.
You people are so busy trying to create this divide.
No, I think she's saying
between the people who are outside Liberia and the people who are inside Liberia. Let me tell you something, okay? I'm not Isaac. Okay? I'm not Isaac. I'm not polished. I'm not sophisticated, and I don't have to be. Here's the thing. If you think the people in Liberia are taking Liberia where it can go, then all the more for you.
No,
but
she
do
doesn't
not come
think that,
to me.
George, she's on the same page with you. She doesn't think that.
Okay, so my thing is, as far as I'm concerned, the people in Liberia, they have had 20 years to change the trajectory of the country. Okay? And what have we seen? I will tell you what we've seen. We've seen an Akaris Gray who grew up in Slipway, whose constituents are pulling water from a well in a bucket with a wooden cover, decide that Slipway is not good enough for him to get married in. Instead, he will go to Paris to get married. The strange thing is, he doesn't even speak French. But he himself is so disgusted with Slipway and the people he represents that he says, you know what? On the day that should be the most important day of my life, where I pick a partner, there is just no way in hell we can do this in Slipway. We cannot share our joy with the people who voted for me. So not only will I go to Paris to get married, I'm going to then throw it in their faces and say, your country is so dirty, it's so nasty, it's so despicable that I will go to Paris to get married and I will come back. And guess what? Every one of you idiots will line up and you will vote for me again. That's how stupid they are. That's the long and short of it. That's my closing for today. You guys have a great week. Enjoy.
All right, folks. Thank you, George. Folks, we appreciate you for listening. And for those who have been watching this, we're always looking for ideas, for suggestions, and feel free. If you want to come on, just let us know. Just put your message there. We are very open. We are engaging. We believe this is a marketplace of ideas. Then you can participate at any level you want to participate. But we really, really do need more participation from more Liberians, because that's the only way we can really move our country forward. There are a lot of Liberians on the ground who are not included in the development process because, like Ansu Dwalo have mentioned earlier, people are insecure and uncomfortable with including other people in the development process. But we keep knocking on the door, we keep pounding and making the sounds and noise and making the offerings. That if they use it and benefit Liberian people, wonderful. If they don't, we push for changes, and that's what this is about. So thank you for watching. We appreciate you. Next week, Wednesday, while we still keep trying to work with radio stations in Liberia so we can get heard on a wider basis. Thank you.